Nope. 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 Soon. Nope. Yes. Back in 2017, I began a full restoration of my 96 Bayliner by tearing it apart all the way down to the hull. From there, I began the rebuilding process, which included learning to fiberglass, rebuilding an engine and outdrive, learning to fair and paint, and even upholstery. Now, I've bought a 28-foot cabin cruiser, and I'm starting all over. Welcome, my name's Jared. Now get ready, because it's going to be a ship show. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Jared. It is almost the end of April, and it's supposed to get down to about 27 degrees tonight, as you might be able to tell by all these potted plants I had to bring inside. So I figured instead of wasting a night because it's too cold out, let's take a look around the garage and find something that we can kind of knock off the list tonight. Again, things that need to get done to go in the engine compartment before the engine goes in. Let's tackle something tonight, check it off the list, hopefully, and get it ready to go back on the boat. And what that thing is going to be is what you saw in the intro. I want to take a look at the trim pump. I have no suspicions that there's anything wrong with it, purely based on the fact that the oil that's in the reservoir still is very clean. Now, on my previous boats, I've had issues with the seals on the trim rams leaking, and that basically manifests itself as basically milkshake oil in the reservoir. Now, if you have that issue, I'll put a link to a card in whatever corner it puts it in, to an old video I made on how to rebuild your trim cylinders, and knock on wood, I'm not gonna have to do that here. Everything seemed okay. So I just wanna go over this trim pump, mostly give it a good cleaning because it's, again, still kind of dirty from taking it out of the boat. I do wanna test its function. Let's get the camera over here and let's start taking a look at it. Okay, step one, as I mentioned, is just giving this thing a good thorough cleaning. I'm gonna get some rags, paper towels, some simple green, and just kind of give this thing a good wipe down, and then we will take a closer look at things, and if everything looks okay, then we'll try and get a battery over here with some jumper leads and see if this thing functions in both directions. Okay, so I got this thing cleaned up. It's no show pig, but it's looking a lot better than it was. So the next step is to come through and test it electrically, make sure the motor's operating, the solenoids are operating. So what I've done is I have hooked up the leads to a battery. So I got 12 volts hooked up to the main positive negative lead. Now I've gone ahead and made this little jumper. It's just a piece of 16 gauge wire with a spade terminal on each end. And the point of that is I'm gonna use it to jumper leads in this connector. I don't know off the top of my head which of these contacts is positive relative to the other two. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my multimeter. I am going to probe the ground bolt with the negative, and we will probe these till I get positive. I suspect it's that one, but it doesn't appear to be. Oh, there we go. If you're looking at the smiley face, it's the right eye as you're looking at it. Okay, so now what that means is we need to go ahead and plug our spade connector into the positive side. Then we're just gonna plug this into one of the other contacts and check its upward movement and its downward movement. Now, that being said, I have two open hydraulic ports here, which means hydraulic fluid is gonna come out of there. What I'm gonna do is just deal with it, essentially. I'm gonna try and put a rag here or something, just try and catch anything that comes out. So here's a very non-absorbent rag, which is, I'm sure, gonna work terrible. Okay, so what I'm looking for here is obviously that the motor is gonna run, and I will check, make sure there's hydraulic fluid moving. Really, the true test is gonna be once it's in the boat, hooked up to the full trim system and everything. But what this is gonna at least allow me to do is, one, verify that the motor works, but in addition to that, it's also gonna verify that these solenoids are working correctly because I'm using the actual trigger wires. Now, if I do this and the solenoids don't kick on and the motor doesn't work, that's gonna tell me that one of these solenoids may be malfunctioning. And if that happens, well, let's cross that bridge if we get there, and if we don't, then I'll explain it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do first is just probe one of these and see if it works. Yep. It's a little sticky there at first, but it finally went. Okay, let's check the other direction. All right, so let's talk about what just happened. So as I probed the one contact, the first couple times I touched it, it didn't do anything. And I think that was just either the motor being a little sticky from sitting or the solenoid maybe had some corrosion on it. But after a couple of taps, it broke free. And we had hydraulic come out. Now that hydraulic fluid came out of the down port. So that means the trim cylinder or the trim pump is working in the down direction. But when I touch the up direction, you can hear that. That clicking is the solenoid. So the solenoid is getting powered and physically working. At least the internals of it, that clicking noise means that solenoid's doing something. Now, it may have a lot of corrosion in there and it might have issues making good contact. But the fact that that solenoid's clicking is at least telling me I'm getting power to the coil on the solenoid. But for some reason, the power is not going through the power contacts of the solenoid to the pump. Or it means the pump, for whatever reason, is not able to spin in the reverse direction. Now, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because there's no pressure on the system right now. And if it's spinning one way, there's really no reason it shouldn't spin the other way. It's just a basic DC motor, and if it can spin one way, there's no mechanical reason it shouldn't go the other way. So my suspicion at this point is that the up solenoid is got some corrosion inside on the contacts. Again, I've made an old video on this. I'll try and remember to put a card up again where I actually cross-sectioned one of these solenoids to show you what's inside of it. There's basically a spring-loaded copper disc that moves up and down as you apply power to that solenoid. And that magnetic disc can get pitting and corrosion on it over time from sparking from the operation of the trim pump. So unfortunately what that means is we got to dig in a little bit deeper, which is why we're doing this now, because I don't want to get this back on the boat and find out after the fact that the solenoids are bad. So let's bring you in a little bit closer and we will disconnect the wire and go into the solenoid, and then we will try and get a closer look and see what's going on. Okay. So let's go ahead and get in here. Now the first thing I need to do is there's a little cover here. Okay, so underneath that's basically a little bus bar that bridges the positive wire to the solenoid. We're only gonna look at the up solenoid for now, which if you don't know what that is and how to easily remember which is which, remember blue sky, green grass. So blue is up direction and green is the wire for the down direction. So it's always a helpful thing to remember. So let's go ahead and get this blue wire off and the red wire. Now, if you're not familiar, this is actually a fuse. So it's a similar thing that's on your starter. Here's that little brass bus bar that connects the two together. Focus. There you go. Now, at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the green wire from the lower solenoid as well. We know it was working, but, this is one of those things that, unless it's like $400 per solenoid, it's probably something you want to consider replacing both at the same time. I'm going to at least remove them both. Let me get these out of here and we'll take a closer look. Okay, here is the culprit solenoid. It's kind of peeking around looking. I don't see any like giant burn holes or, oh, wait, no. I was gonna say it looked like it was cracked there, but it looks like somebody actually put a heavy coat of paint on here or something. Again, at this point, there's really not a whole lot I can check. I mean, I can power up the coil again and measure the resistance across here, but the fact that the motor wasn't doing anything makes me think that it's gonna show an open, but we can try it anyway, see what happens. Okay, welcome down to the basement shop. We moved down here, it's just gonna be a little bit easier to diagnose and kind of show what I'm working with here. So off screen here, you can't see, but I have a little lab bench power supply up here that I have adjusted to 12 volts. So I'm going to take these alligator clips. I have my multimeter set to, right now it's 6,000 ohms. I mean, that's probably way higher. I mean, if this thing was working as we expect, the resistance across these terminals once the solenoid is engaged should be less than an ohm. I have it set high just to be sure, make sure we're not like off scale or something. But so with those clamps on there now, as we would expect, it's still showing open circuit because the solenoid's not engaged. Now I'm going to take my two alligator clips here that are going to my power supply. Again, we're set to 12 volts. All right, so let's clip it on these small terminals for the solenoid, positive and negative. Okay, so we heard that solenoid click again like we did upstairs in the garage. However, if this is going to come across in focus, it is still showing open circuit. So there is no connection currently between these lugs, which is really the function of a solenoid. It's basically an electronically controlled switch. So when you apply a 12-volt source to these small terminals, it takes a small amount of power to switch a large amount of power. So that's kind of what these are, the purpose of these. Yeah, so that kind of confirms our suspicion. Now, the dilemma is, do we replace one or both? Because the concern is if one is failing, the other one is probably not too far behind. I think I'm going to end up replacing both of these. They're about $30-something a piece, so it's not exactly breaking the bank. So for peace of mind, I'm going to go ahead and order 2 of them. I think what I'm going to do, let me unplug this because it's fan noise is annoying. If you go back and watch my previous video on these trim solenoids, there was a couple of videos I did on it, and one of them I basically ended up adding these sort of homemade things that were kind of come to be known as solenoid savers on the iBoats forum. So what I did is I took diodes, and there's something called a flyback diode, which you'll typically see in electric circuits on anything really with a coil. And if you go back and look at that video, I go into more detail as to what the issue is. I'm not going to get into it here, but I think I'm going to go ahead and make myself a new set of those solenoid savers and put them on the new ones. I'm going to go ahead, get on the Google machine, order up some new solenoids, and when those arrive, we will pick back up here and I will show you how to put these diodes on and get them reinstalled and test the pump again. All right, welcome back. Through the magic of YouTubery, it is officially 4-5 days later, something like that, and we have our new trim solenoids. So let's get these opened up and I will show you how we're going to put these back together. Here is our new trim solenoids, both the same part. Big difference is they are nice and clean, which is cool. I have my old setup here on the bench, just for reference, so I didn't forget how this was going to go. The one thing that's slightly different here that wasn't there before is this little guy. This is my solenoid savers. I mentioned this in the previous clip, I think. So let me bring in here tight so you can see what's going on. So hopefully you can see a little bit better here. We have the original harness. Everything's just kind of sitting here loose. Well, I got to loosen a couple more of these, but I wanted to make sure my wires were kind of left in place so I could remember exactly where everything goes. So I'm just going to kind of swap things over one for one as we go. Because these are the same, there's no correct or incorrect orientation here. So I am going to set the 2 new ones side by side. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to remove these, the higher power contact, these nuts on here. I'm going to remove those and we'll swap this bus bar over. All right, got the bus bar on there. Next thing I'm going to swap over is this this harness. So I need to go ahead and remove these couple of the solenoid nuts on the bottom here real quick. Okay, so this is the orientation of this harness. Just going to slide this out of the way, drop this in place, just like that. All right, next thing we need to swap over is this ground wire between the two. Okay, that is everything off the old ones. Now I'm going to set those aside. And let me go get the bracket that this mounts to, and we'll talk about how this gets assembled to that. I did go ahead and give it a fresh coat of paint because there was a couple of spots that were starting to show some signs of rust, but just trying to get ahead of it before the rust starts to spread. So let me go get that. Here is that bracket. These get assembled onto said bracket. This should go on roughly this way, and the fuse goes up here. So we're going to start with that bolt in that corner just because it'll be easier. And I'm going to go ahead and get these other 4 started. Got these 4 bolts mostly tightened down. I didn't want to tighten them down completely before I made sure that this bus bar was going to be able to align, but at this point it looks good. So I'm going to pop this positive wire on top of the bus bar. The other positive wire, which has the fuse on it, which is sitting back here. This guy, that's going to go on the other one. I'm going to leave that off for now. So we got our new clean brass nuts that go on here. I'm going to go ahead and put this one on. Just so I don't lose this, I'm going to loosely put this on there. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the other 2 main studs. Let me grab my pump sitting down here. Now let's pop this bracket up, and I got the 2 mounting bolts on the back here. Just remove those. So we got these 3 wires from the pump that still need to be mounted. This ground is going to go back there, so let's get that out of the way. The 2 wires for the pump that go to the solenoid. Since these are the bigger terminals, I'm going to go ahead and put these on first. So that is going to go on there. The green is going to go on the bottom. Now, this is where these magic guys show up. Again, the diodes. They're both identical, so it doesn't matter which goes where. And then they go to a common ground. I'm going to place these, one on the green wire terminal, one on the blue wire terminal, like so. We will go ahead and put the nut back on. Okay, so we got the blue terminal and the red terminal, or the green terminal tightened down along with their diodes and the ground wire coming up here. The next step, I think I'm going to go ahead and bolt all these ground connections together. And at that point, we'll be ready to go ahead and install the positive lead as well as tighten down these smaller coil wires as well. Let's go ahead and get the bolt in the ground position. This is said bolt. And we have a couple of wires that need to go in here. So we have the original motor ground. We have the diode ground, which is a new one. Then we also have the coil ground. And then there's going to be the actual ground wire that goes from here to the ground bus and the bilge. This is just enough to technically be legal per ABYC. You can have up to 4 terminals per stud. I'm going to go ahead and tighten down this nut. And I did go through and align all of these ground wires, kind of clocked them in a way that I'm making sure that all the terminals are touching each other and there's no gaps between them. So wiring wise, we're pretty much set here. Now, a couple last things. I need to go ahead and reinstall this little sub harness, which converts this connector to the wiring harness that plugs in to the boat for the trim. Let's go ahead and get this plugged in this way, I think. Now, last things I need to do wiring wise are just tighten these 4 smaller coil nuts and then get the positive wire installed. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, that is all the wires tightened down. Should be good to go there. Now let's go ahead and get the positive wire / fuse installed. All right, well, I found a couple small issues with the 3D printed cover. One, I think this wall's too thick, so the studs are actually hitting before the screw can actually reach the threaded area. So I'm gonna have to make this pocket a little bit deeper. But either way, I need to reprint something. So this isn't gonna go on for now. So that goes there. Anyways, let's get this wiring hooked back up to my battery over here, and then we can finish up our test, make sure it's working in both up and down directions. All right, we got the wires hooked up. Okay, it's one direction. That's the other. Sweet. Solenoids are working both directions now, and that means the motor's good. I could hear fluid pumping, so as far as I can tell, the pump's good. Yeah, we got fluid coming out both sides, and that is a mess. All right, guys, that is the trim pump tested. Kind of ran into some hiccups there with the solenoids, but that is why we're testing it on the bench. Finding out those kinds of issues when it's easy to get to it. I think that's going to wrap up this video. I'm going to just kind of leave this one dedicated to the trim pump testing, solenoid replacement, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, obviously the true test is going to be once this thing's in the boat with the whole trim rims and everything in there, but that's gonna obviously have to wait because the motor needs to go in before the outdrive goes on and all that kind of stuff. So that's gonna be a good stopping point for this, and knock on wood, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work, but we're gonna call this a success. So again, that's gonna wrap it up for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found this useful. I hope you found it informative. And again, don't forget to go back and check out the old video on the trim cylinders, or the solenoid diode things. that's awesome to get this checked off the list. The Bennett trim tab pump is sitting right next to it here, and we're gonna dive into that soon so we can get both of these back into the boat. All right, guys, like I said, that's gonna wrap this one up. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment down below. I always try and answer as many as I can. It's kind of getting to be that time of the year where I'm getting a lot of people viewing these comments because they're getting their boats ready to go back in the water. So again, if you have any questions, leave a comment. I will try and get back to you. And until next time, thank you guys so much for watching as always, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.